Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be focused on textual analysis, reading between the lines. First, we need to understand what is a textual analysis. Well, a textual analysis is not about whether you like the text, it's about how and why it communicates meaning. You examine how the parts of a text work together to create this meaning. It goes way beyond just summarizing or recalling events within the text, and it focuses more on interpretation, evidence to support that, and then context. So, why do we analyze text? Well, for one, to develop critical reading and thinking skills, and also to discover deep meanings within the text and any themes that we might reveal. We also want to understand how authors use language intentionally and to form and defend an interpretation with evidence. So, with your textual analysis, you always want to support your interpretation with evidence from the text. So, analysis helps us become better readers, writers, and thinkers. It also teaches us to see how language influences meaning. So, some key elements of a textual analysis. For one, you will have your thesis. So, look at that as your roadmap, which we'll talk about a little later in this presentation. Evidence. You want to provide evidence from the text. This is through quotes, examples, or any moments from the text that stood out to you. The analysis portion. That is how you explain evidence that supports your thesis. This is where your interpretation comes into play. What did you take from it? What do you want your audience to know? And with the analysis, you also want to provide evidence from the text that supports not only the things you're saying in the analysis, but also your thesis statement. And then your conclusion gives broader significance or insight about the topic. So maybe you give a recap of what you discussed, and you could also talk about what is needed more regarding this topic. And then, of course, you want to restate your thesis statement, but in a different way. Your conclusion should give your audience a sense of closure, but something to think about for the future. So think of it like a puzzle. You gather pieces, such as the evidence. You then explain how it fits, which is the analysis, and then you show the bigger picture, which is your thesis statement. And then your conclusion just wraps everything up. Some other textual features that you can use to analyze. You can analyze the word choice that was used. So talking about the author's intention, why did they choose this word versus another one? Imagery, any visual or sensory details that's in the text, you can talk about that. You can also talk about tone and mood, symbolism within the text, theme. You can also talk about how the author structured their text regarding organization, repetition, and even the use of transitions. So these features are your tools. Analyzing them helps you figure out what the author is doing and why. So looking at this text excerpt from Robert Frost stopping by woods on a snowy evening, we have this excerpt and it says, "And miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep." So if I'm analyzing this, one thing that I want to make note of is that he repeats the same thing twice. Why is that? And that is a question that you have to ask when you're annotating or doing a close read on your text. Why does the author repeat this phrase? What message do they want to convey? What tone are they giving off? So in miles to go before I sleep, maybe he's traveling and he's trying to reach a destination before he can rest and go to sleep. Or maybe his mind is still processing everything from the day before he can shut down and turn everything off. However you want to take it, it is your interpretation. You would just explain that, which is the analysis, and provide evidence from the text to support it. There are different steps in the analysis process. For one, you want to read your text closely. I would read it 2 to 3 times and annotate the text. You're going to take notes, mark things you don't understand, words that stand out to you, and what still confuses you. And ask the main question, which is why. Okay, why does the author do this? Then you want to identify any literary elements in there: style, tone, structure, imagery, similes, metaphors, the list goes on. And then you want to form a thesis. So what is your interpretation? And last but not least, support your analysis with evidence. Everything needs to be supported. So this is where you'll use quotes and information or examples from the text to support your information. So what a textual analysis is not. It's not just a summary. Some people get confused between recalling information and analyzing it. They are two different things. And it's not just personal opinion. I think, or I believe, I feel. No, the author did this because. That's the type of language that we want to use. It's not a simple book review, so we're not reviewing the text. And it's not guesswork without evidence. If you write something, support it. If it doesn't have support, it's not going to be as strong as it would be if you provided that additional support from the text. So, a sample thesis statement. We don't want a simple generic statement. The story was sad and dramatic, okay? That doesn't really tell us much of anything. However, if we say the author uses imagery and repetition to emphasize the character's emotional isolation, this tells us exactly what we're going to talk about and what specific key points we're going to hit. So we're going to talk about imagery, repetition, and how those are used to emphasize the character's emotional isolation. Be as specific as possible. And then whichever way you introduce your key points in your thesis statement, you want to line up your body paragraphs to reflect that. Here are some key takeaways. Remember that a textual analysis is about how meaning is made, okay? So look at it from the lens of the author and look at it from the lens of an investigator. So you're trying to investigate what the author is trying to say, what meaning is being made from that, and what does he or she want the audience to convey from that. Remember that you want to focus on language, structure, and context. So within that, pull out things that you want to analyze. Last but not least, can't stress this enough, use evidence to support your interpretation. Remember that a textual analysis helps you become a sharper reader and a stronger writer. It's like becoming a detective of language. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Happy writing.